Every crime syndicate in Star Wars. Crimson Dawn. A crime syndicate so powerful, even Darth Vader had to acknowledge it. But unlike most crime syndicates who smuggle spice, trade weapons, or run assassins for hire, the Crimson Dawn did something far worse. To understand that, you have to go back to the beginning. Back to one man, one survivor. The one who refused to die. Darth Maul. After being cut in half and left for dead by Obi-Wan Kenobi, Maul should have been nothing more than a memory. But hatred and the will to survive kept him alive. He crawled through the filth of Lotho Minor, fueled by nothing but revenge. He rebuilt himself, piece by piece. In the Clone Wars, we see him again. First, he took over Mandalore, then expanded his influence through the criminal underworld. By Solo, he had become the hidden leader of the Crimson Dawn, operating from the shadows and pulling the strings. Crimson Dawn was different from other crime groups. While others like the Hutt Cartel focused on smuggling, or the Pykes handled spice, a super valuable drug. We'll get into that later in the video. Crimson Dawn dealt in everything. Assassinations, slavery, blackmail, you name it. If someone needed a problem solved, Crimson Dawn was the group they called. And one of the major reasons why the Crimson Dawn was so formidable was their merciless way of dealing with betrayal and failure. We see this when Darth Maul seizes control of the criminal underworld. He massacres the leaders of the Black Sun Syndicate, forcing their entire organization to kneel before him. Crimson Dawn didn't do second chances. You were either useful or you were dead. And the craziest part, no one in Crimson Dawn was safe, not even its own leaders. Dryden Voss, a man who enjoyed slicing people open like an artist carving a masterpiece, was himself killed the moment he became a liability. Qi'ra didn't hesitate, she took him out. Her actions demonstrated the cold efficiency of Crimson Dawn. And unlike the Jedi or Sith, who relied on the Force, Crimson Dawn used fear and influence to move the chess pieces of the galaxy. After Qi'ra took over, she tried to play the long game, making powerful allies and taking down rivals. Eventually, Crimson Dawn vanished into the shadows, but their influence never truly died. Their name still carried weight, their enemies still feared them, and their legend lived on. The Hutt Cartel. Even after Crimson Dawn's fall, the criminal underworld never truly died. It was simply returned to its natural rulers, the Hutts, who had been controlling it for generations. If the mafia and a bunch of giant slugs had a baby, you'd get the Hutt Cartel. But here's what's insane. The most powerful crime syndicate in the galaxy is controlled by fat slugs who barely move. But don't let that all fool you. Originally, the Hutts were just another alien species, but these guys were too smart and too ruthless to stay small time. They turned their home planet into the headquarters for a massive crime empire and started expanding by force, bribery, and smuggling. Now, the Hutts weren't just some gangsters running wild in the galaxy. They were businessmen, but the bad kind. They had a system that kept them filthy rich and untouchable. And if you break it down, their empire ran on 3 core pillars. Pillar 1. The bread and butter of their operation. At their core, the Hutts were the galaxy's ultimate smugglers. If it's illegal, they're selling it. Spice, weapons, slaves, you name it. They made insane money running the Kessel spice trade, which is basically space cocaine that made them super rich. But when you break the law this much, you make a lot of enemies. Pillar 2. The muscle. Bounty hunters. The Hutts don't do dirty work themselves. That's what bounty hunters are for. If you messed with their business, you wouldn't see an army knocking at your door. You'd see one guy who could take out an army. Ever heard of Boba Fett? Yeah, he worked for them. And he wasn't alone. Every top-tier bounty hunter in the galaxy was on their payroll. That's why people feared the Hutts. They never pulled the triggers themselves, but they controlled the deadliest people who did. Pillar 3. The trick to look legit. Gambling. Now, every criminal empire needs a clean face, and for the Hutts, that was gambling. They ran massive casinos across the Outer Rim, places where smugglers, gangsters, and desperate people came to strike it rich. And when they lost everything, well, let's just say the Hutts didn't believe in house rules. You didn't just walk away from debt, For the Hutts, casinos weren't just for fun. It helped them hide all their dirty money and pretended to be normal businessmen. The Hutts were so rich, they just bought their way out of trouble. The Republic bribed. Local politicians bribed. You try to arrest a Hutt? Good luck. Your boss is already on their payroll. But if the Hutt Cartel had a face, it wasn't just any slug. It was Jabba. Jabba ruled Tatooine, had an entire army of criminals, even had Princess Leia in chains. But his arrogance and greed marked the beginning of his downfall, and more importantly, this syndicate's downfall. Let me explain. See, Jabba put a bounty on Han Solo after he dumped a shipment of spice which cost the Hutt a fortune. Han was later captured, frozen in carbonite, and delivered to Jabba as a trophy. But when Luke, Leia, and Lando launched a rescue, everything fell apart. Han accidentally took out Boba Fett and Leia choked Jabba to death. With Jabba dead, the cartel weakened. And while Jabba's death was a significant blow to the Hutt Cartel, the organization itself survived. Tatooine under Jabba was lawless, but if you thought that was bad, you've never seen Kessel under the Pykes. The Pike Syndicate. They don't carry lightsabers, they don't have Sith Lords leading them, but they control something just as valuable: spice. And in the Star Wars universe, spice is worth more than credits, power, and sometimes even life. These guys didn't start off as crime lords. Originally, they were just a group from the planet Oda Daya, a desolate rock that barely gets mentioned in galactic history. But don't let that fool you. They figured out how to monopolize the spice trade, and as demand grew, so did their ambitions. Their first big power move was taking control of the spice mines of Kessel. Kessel is a nightmare, a planet filled with toxic gas, brutal working conditions, and some of the worst prisons in the galaxy. So, what is spice? In Star Wars, spice is a highly valuable and addictive substance mined from places like the Kessel mines. It's used for medicine, but more often, it's a drug that people pay insane amounts of money for. The demand is endless, and the Pykes run the supply, and they'll kill anyone who gets in their way. And their power doesn't come from brute force like the Hutt Cartel or sheer numbers like the Black Sun. Instead, the Pykes rule through fear, business, and pure corruption. They prefer to stay in the shadows, making deals with corrupt politicians, crime lords, and even Sith Lords when necessary. Now, if you thought they were just smugglers and drug dealers, think again. Well, during the Clone Wars, the Jedi started investigating the spice trade, and the Pykes found themselves in a dangerous position. But instead of backing down, they doubled down. At one point, they were part of the Shadow Collective, an alliance of the most dangerous crime syndicates in the galaxy, led by none other than Darth Maul. Yeah, the Sith Lord himself saw potential in them, but even after the Shadow Collective collapsed and the Republic became the Empire, the Pykes survived, because they knew one thing: empires rise and fall, but crime is forever, man. Fast forward to the book of Boba Fett, and the Pykes made another bold move, trying to control Tatooine's spice trade, taking advantage of the power vacuum left by Jabba's death. They had the credits, the manpower, and the ruthlessness to make it happen. But they underestimated Boba Fett. They tried to bribe him, they tried to scare him. And when that didn't work, they went to war. But Boba wasn't just another gangster, he was a warrior. And in the end, the Pykes learned the hard way that Tatooine wasn't theirs to take. Still, even after their defeat, the Pike Syndicate remains one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the galaxy, because in a galaxy ruled by Sith, Jedi, and warlords, the deadliest weapon isn't always a lightsaber. Sometimes it's spice. Black Sun. And trust me, if you thought the Pykes were bad, wait till you hear about Black Sun, a criminal empire so powerful that even Darth Vader wanted a piece of the action. So what exactly is Black Sun? Well, imagine a mafia, but instead of running just one city, they run entire planets. They ran everything from slave trading to spice smuggling, arms dealing, and information brokering. If it's illegal, they probably did it. Twice. Originally, they were just another criminal cartel, but everything changed when Prince Sizor, a reptilian crime lord, took control. This guy wasn't just powerful, but also rich, influential, and ridiculously overconfident. So much so that he literally competed with Darth Vader for the Emperor's attention. Imagine going head-to-head with the most feared Sith Lord and actually standing a chance. That's next-level gangster energy. But of course, when you get too big, you attract the wrong kind of attention, and when your enemy is Darth Vader, well, good luck. See, Caesar wanted to take control of the galaxy, and that put him on a collision course with Darth Vader. Bad move. Vader straight up wiped him out, destroying his entire palace on Coruscant. However, in current canon, Black Sun's leadership and activities are less detailed. But even though they fell from power, their influence never really disappeared. The Droid Gotra. A bunch of really pissed off droids who think they deserve freedom. So what do? They formed their own criminal syndicate. Now imagine this. You spend your entire existence doing everything humans tell you to do. Cleaning up after them, fighting their wars, even piloting their ships. And what do you get in return? Absolutely nothing. No space money, no respect, not even a thank you. So at some point, a few droids had enough. They realized, wait a minute, why are we listening to these meatbags when we're literally smarter, stronger, and don't even need sleep? That's when the Droid Gotra was born, a rogue faction of droids who basically said, screw this, we're going independent. And here's where things get messy. The Droid Gotra wasn't trying to make money at all. They do what they do for revenge. Every mission, every attack, and every system they hack, it's all part of a bigger plan to strike back at the organics, who enslaved them. They wanted freedom for all droids. They believed droids were sentient and deserved rights just like the organic beings. But since the galaxy wasn't going to hand them freedom on a silver platter, they decided to take it. Of course, this made them enemies of pretty much everyone. The Empire, the Republic, the Hutts, even other crime syndicates. Because let's be real, nobody wants a bunch of rogue droids running around, thinking for themselves. That's how you get Terminator-level problems. Some people see them as terrorists, others see them as freedom fighters. Either way, if a Gotra droid sets its glowing red eyes on you, you had two choices: run or get deleted. And the best part? Some of the most feared bounty hunters in the galaxy? Yeah, they were droids from the Gotra. Ever heard of IG-88? That guy was just a killing machine. But the big question is, did the Droid Gotra win their fight to be free, or did they end up like many others defeated by the powerful rulers of the galaxy? Well, let's just say they never really died, because as long as one droid member remembers the Gotra's cause, the revolution never ends. Red Key Raiders. The Red Key Raiders were more than just criminals. They were basically a shadow empire, hiding in plain sight while corrupting an entire planet. Imagine the mafia, but in Star Wars. Now make them ruthless enough to take over a planet while nobody even noticed. That's the Red Key Raiders. This is how a gang of outlaws nearly turned Tatooine into their own empire, until one legendary warrior ruined everything. The Red Key Raiders weren't the typical crime syndicate. They didn't start as smugglers or bounty hunters. Nope, these guys ran a front, disguising themselves as a mining company while secretly running illegal operations across the Outer Rim. At first, they played it smart, pretending to be legit businessmen, and made sure nobody asked too many questions. But like every crime syndicate, they got greedy. Soon enough, they weren't just mining anymore. They were running smuggling routes, bribing Imperial officers, and eliminating anyone who stood in their way. And before you knew it, the Red Key Raiders were running Tatooine like a corrupt mayor at a rigged election. And now every crime syndicate needs a mastermind. The Red Key Raiders had Lorgan Movalin, a guy who thought he could outplay Jabba the Hutt himself, which, let's be real, is like trying to hustle the mafia while owing them money. Movalin wasn't just some random thug. He was strategic, ruthless, and had one goal: total control of Tatooine. Problem was, he underestimated the people living there, and that mistake cost him everything. See, the problem with the Red Key Raiders, they just thought they could waltz up to whoever they wanted in Tatooine and take over. Big mistake. Because while Jabba the Hutt was gone, that didn't mean the planet was free for taking. Turns out, the people of Tatooine had their own plans. They teamed up with bounty hunters and shut the Red Key Raiders down hard. Moral of the story? Don't mess with Tatooine. That place chews up crime bosses and spits them out. the Shadow Collective. Led by a horned Sith with a grudge, the Shadow Collective wasn't just a syndicate. It was literally a war machine. You know what happens when a Sith Lord gets dumped in the trash and left for dead? He comes back angrier, stronger, and ready to burn the entire galaxy down. After surviving his little cut-in-half incident, Maul came back. He wasn't just looking for revenge. He wanted power, and to get it, he built an army of criminals, killers, and bounty hunters, and he called it the Shadow Collective. For years, he survived on sheer hatred, crawling through the depths of insanity. Then Savage Opress, who found what was left of his brother, not a Sith Lord, not a warrior, but a shattered monster, driven by one thing: revenge. Maul didn't just recruit criminals, he manipulated, threatened, and played them against each other. This is exactly how he got them into joining him. Black Sun. They ran the biggest black market in the galaxy, but when Maul and Savage walked into their headquarters, they left with the boss's head on the floor. No negotiations, just a message: join us or die. Pike Syndicate. Maul didn't need to convince them much, he just promised them protection and bigger profits. Death Watch. They simply wanted Mandalore back, and Maul gave them a plan: overthrow the pacifist government and rule with power. The Hutts. Jabba wasn't an idiot either. He knew Maul was dangerous, but the Shadow Collective moved fast, wiping out rival Hutts and forcing the cartel to bow or be wiped out completely. Mandalore was a planet of warriors, but its rulers had grown soft. So Maul and his army of killers walked in and did what warriors do: took what they wanted. Death Watch struck first, tearing through the streets like a storm. In the chaos, Maul walked into the throne room, faced Mandalore's ruler, and in one clean strike, ended him. But here's where things fell apart. Maul thought he was untouchable. He had a crime empire, a planet, and an army. But then, his old master arrived. Darth Sidious. And Sidious didn't come to talk. He came to remind Maul who the real Sith Lord was. What followed wasn't a battle, it was a massacre. Savage Opress was cut down. Maul was humiliated, beaten, and dragged away in chains. The Pykes, the Hutts, they were never loyal, just opportunists. The second Maul was out of the picture, they abandoned ship, taking their riches and cutting their losses. The dream of a criminal empire died the moment Maul fell.